design company called Madison, and I'm kind of here to talk about a fairly hardcore aspect of product design. I guess when you tend to think of product designs, you tend to think of how the product looks, and hopefully it kind of looks good, or you think about how comfortable and ergonomic the design is, and hopefully it is comfortable and ergonomic. But really, that's only like a small part of the product design story, and that to actually get to a good result, you have to have made a lot of good decisions throughout the development process. And I think that's kind of forgotten a little bit when we think about product design. So what I want to do today is to really just talk about design decisions in the context of medical devices and really kind of unpack that issue a little bit more. First off, I'd just like to say a little bit about Madison and what we do. So we specialise in the design of medical devices, and we tend to work with innovators and universities and hospitals who are developing new kinds of medical device. So an example here is this. So this is a system for dysphagia patients. So these are patients who've had a stroke and they've lost the ability to swallow. And a clinician at the Wythenshawe Hospital near Manchester came up with the idea of stimulating the nerve endings within the pharynx electrically, and that would cause the brain to reorganise itself basically, and the patients would be more likely to recover from the stroke and be able to swallow again. So we work with the client and with the University of Manchester Tech Transfer Office to develop both the prototypes to do the trials, but also the commercial device as well, and that includes the user interface as well as the physical design and the catheter. We also do a lot of work in diagnostics. So this is a point-of-care diagnostic platform. So the point-of-care bit means that it's going to be used in your local clinic by your average nurse or your average GP, who's got lots of other things to think about, and they don't really want to think about how to use this device. So so it's incumbent on us as the designers to make the device as simple to use as possible. So again, our design decisions have to be really about making the whole solution work well, so that people really don't have to think about that. So again, in this case, we designed both the fluidic cartridge and also the reader as well. So getting back to this notion of design decisions, and kind of explaining a bit more about what I mean by that. So this chart is probably familiar to a lot of you. It kind of shows how risk and how the cost of changes over the product development life cycle. So when you're designing a product, you really want the risk to reduce, and so that by the time you're about to launch it, you pretty much get it sorted, and that is unlikely that there's going to be any problems which might interfere with your plans. And at the same time, obviously, you're spending time developing and designing it, and you're spending money buying tooling and things like that, and so the cost of realising you've made the mistake and cost of changing the design goes up as the project goes on. So that towards the end, when you're close to launch, it's really expensive if you've decided that you need to make a change to the specification. So it's really important in the early stages of the product development process to make the right decisions. So really, that's kind of what I'm kind of focusing on in this talk today. Now, so this is Malcolm Gladwell. So he's a writer and a kind of social observer, and he came up. Well, he's famous for a number of reasons, but he came up with the idea of the tipping point. So he kind of, if you like, coined that phrase and popularised it, and now you kind of hear that all the time in the news and the media. And he also wrote this book called Blink, which kind of expands on his thesis that although we think we're considering the evidence, and although we think we're making careful designs, what he's saying is actually, we actually operate on gut feeling, and that we make decisions in an instant. So for interviewing someone, we decide as soon as they walk in the door whether we like them or not. And again, when we think about making decisions, really we're going with what we thought from the start. So it's kind of a bit of a depressing thought, I think. And I'm not entirely sure I really believe in what he says. If you read the book, it's kind of full of anecdotes. So it's kind of, there's not a lot of evidence in there. But it's certainly true that, I've seen a lot of bad decisions in product development. And I think there is a tendency for things like not invented here and your own, likes and dislikes to influence you in unknown ways when you're making decisions. And I remember working for a client a long time ago. It was a big American corporation. We were developing a mobile phone accessory, and we'd pretty much finished the project. And then this VP showed up, vice president showed up to a design review, and then proceeded to make us change one of the major components, and it completely upended the entire design process. And I kind of felt he was kind of trying to make his presence known and trying to prove who was in charge. So I think decisions can be made for the wrong reasons. So at Madison, we kind of take a very much evidence approach. We try to take an evidence approach to when we're helping our clients to make design decisions. And we like to get involved in the project as early as possible, because really that's when the important decisions are being made. And I'm actually a mechanical engineer, but I work a lot with industrial designers. And I think there's something about the minds of industrial designers that they don't necessarily just take the evidence presented to them. They like to they like to challenge things, and they like to challenge our clients in the assumptions and the perceived wisdom which they present to us. So it's not particularly comfortable for our clients, but it's a very valuable service for them. And we follow this kind of process, which is a user-centered design process, and this really means that when we're developing products, we're putting the needs of the user, front and center of the decision making and the product development process. So we're doing things like user research at the start of the project. We're developing concepts and solutions in response to that, and then we're doing user testing. We're going back and we're testing those ideas for users and just making absolutely sure that what we've developed is the right thing. So the kind of tools we use, things like this. This is a storyboard. So this is a bit of scientific equipment we developed. And it kind of takes the client and the whole team actually through the process of how that product might be used. And it's really valuable because you maybe spot problems, maybe spot usability problems, but you also spot design opportunities as well, and ways in which you can add value to the product with new IP. Another popular tool, and again this is all kind of very familiar stuff to product designers, so apologies if the product designers in the audience. But these are user profiles. So this often comes out of our user research. We can kind of summarize a particular user and explain what their motivations are. And these are quite useful, I think, when you're making these design decisions, to think about what the user really would want out of that decision. And because I think the tendency is to make decisions based on what technically seems the right thing to do. So this is a slide from a particular case study. This is a wearable sensor system we developed. I'm going to be talking about wearables, quick plug, and talking about wearables a bit later on this afternoon in the seminar room 4. And this is actually a UK university startup who are developing a heart rate monitor for neonatal babies. So these are babies are going to be really sick. So they're born into consultant-led birthing centres. So they may be very premature, they may have a heart condition, all kinds of reasons. But it's really important to know what their heart rate is as soon as they're born. Unfortunately, pulse oximeters don't really work particularly well with these babies because they often have very low circulation on their extremities. And so the clinicians are often stuck with a stethoscope, listening every 30 seconds, counting the heartbeats. And there's a lot of intervention going on, so they don't want to be spending time doing that. So the idea was to develop a system with a baby hat with a sensor, optical sensor built into it. So the hat is the first thing you put on these babies anyway, because you want to conserve their body heat. So the idea was to put a sensor in the hat, put the baby hat on, you immediately know what the heart rate is and display it on the module, on the monitor. So we did this slide for our client quite early on because out of all the projects we've been involved in, this is the one with the most largest number of big design decisions to be made. And so we kind of put this slide up to kind of focus our clients' attention onto that and to really use it as a guide to our product development. So just one of those decisions was to do with the basic design of the hat. So this is a slide we use with our client just to explore that one issue. So we did a very quick prototype. We actually cut off a sock, and that actually was a very good simulant for the kind of hat design we had in mind. And so we were able to put that on. Our client was able to try it out. The consultant was able to try it out, and we were able to discuss a particular issue, which in this case was around being able to scan the fontanelle. And the clinician could try it out. They could see whether this really worked for them. They didn't actually follow this design direction, but it was able them to examine the issue and unpack it. So that's the kind of decision-making, evidence-based decision-making I'm talking about. Is about doing what you can to explore the issue and testing it. Something about more fundamental decision-making. This is a chart actually a colleague of mine at Biodynamics uses, a chap called Nick Duggan. And when they're talking to their clients, they're maybe trying to help them to modify their ambitions. So, these are often people developing new kinds of products. And so on the vertical axis, you've got the level of technical effort that's going to be required to actually develop this thing. So the higher up it is, the more difficult it is to develop. And then horizontally, we've got the changes which will be required in the marketplace. So generally, users are used to using a product in a certain way, and this new product means that they're going to have to do things differently, and that's a barrier to introduction. So the blue oval is kind of the current state with the way things are done now, and the red oval is where they will be if they introduce this product. But there's two aspects of barriers to introduction which our clients have to consider. So it may make sense for there to be an intermediate step. So maybe you can actually showcase your technology, you can develop something which is still innovative, isn't quite as technically challenging, and doesn't actually require your users to work in such a different way, but it's a good stepping stone on the way to your final objective. So I think Nick will probably kind of explain that slide a little better than I have, but hopefully you get the general idea. So I just wanted to finish up with a counter-argument to everything I've been saying. And I think, product designers, whenever they do presentations, they have to mention Apple at some point in the presentation. So this is mine now. So Steve Jobs is of course famous for being a great innovator, but a rather difficult character. And during the development of the iPhone, it was several years in gestation. And there was a big debate happening within Apple about what kind of interface it would have. So there was a group who thought it should be a bit like a BlackBerry with a little miniature keyboard with lots of buttons. And there's another group who thought it should be a touchscreen. And the argument raged on for months and months between the two groups. And Steve Jobs wasn't really into evidence-based decision-making. He basically at the end said, if you want to carry on being part of this project, you have to give up on the keyboard, and we're going to go for a touch screen. So it's kind of a rather different approach. And I guess history would say that Steve Jobs has been pretty successful, but it's a slightly odd way to make decisions. So I was going to finish on that note. I welcome any questions anyone might have. But thanks very much for listening.